Good morning, everybody. My name is Christina Wigren, and I am here with Stilly Valley Health Connections. Thank you for joining us this morning for our budget-friendly webinar on kid-friendly meals. For everyone who is joining us live today, please note that this class is set up in a Zoom webinar format. This means that all of our participants are muted and your videos are turned off so that we can record this presentation. If you would like to leave any questions or comments, we encourage you to do so by using the chat or the Q&A box, both which are located at the bottom of your screens. Now, I will pass it over to Kelsey Baker with Sound Dietitians, who is presenting on today's topic. Thank you, Kelsey, for joining us, and I hope that you all learn a lot from this class.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you everybody for joining today. Um, Today's budget-friendly topic, as Christina said, is kid-friendly meals on a budget. So this goes out to all our participants who are dealing with the struggles of feeding children, especially during summertime. It can be a little bit trickier without them being in school and having at least lunch provided for them. So hopefully you can walk away today with some ideas of how to stretch the dollar a little bit more this summer and also maybe diversify your child's intake. So we'll begin. So what we'll cover today, our goal is to leave with practical tools to feed your family well without spending more or fighting over dinner, which I know is a big ask and maybe a big goal, and it's definitely going to take a lot of practice and patience, but hopefully some tips will help you along the way. We will cover some themes that we've talked about in all of our previous budget series classes of how to plan and shop smart. We'll just kind of do some summary and reminding, especially if there's anybody new joining today or watching this. And from there, we'll look at specific recipes for that are kid friendly and how to make a recipe for everybody. So you're only having to cook one meal. And then we're going to look into some research of how to help kids expand their intake and how much they're eating. I like to say selective eaters. When our kids hear us say picky, they kind of will accept that title and maybe just run with it and continue to be picky. So I really try to be careful of how I'm talking about it in front of children. And then we're just going to put everything together at the end. And along the way, we'll have a few poll questions just to see how people are engaging with the material that we're learning today and if there's anything that I can answer along the way. So please feel free to use the chat window. So why this topic matters right now, there's kind of two realities for every family that we're juggling. We're trying to lower the grocery bill because groceries are insanely expensive. And we know that with research that if families who plan meals and cook more from home instead of kind of waiting till the last minute to put something together, they can cut their spending by 20 to 30%, which is an average roughly average $1,600 a year of savings. And this is per the USDA, the estimates that they come up with, right? And like within the last couple of years. And what also we know is that kids can be very selective, especially in the windows of about 2 years to 4 years. And it's really important to just keep exposing them to foods because it can take up to 20 times before they want to try a new food and it works for them. They like it or they're willing to eat it. And this is very, very developmentally normal. And we'll go into more detail later in the presentation. But these are kind of the two big reasons why this topic is important and why we're talking about it today. So, what is your biggest mealtime challenge right now in your household? And this is where people can participate in the chat. Is A, not enough time to cook, B, the grocery costs, C, just picky selective eaters in the house trying to figure out what to make them, or D, this is probably mine, recipe burnout, just trying to figure out something new to put on the table that they're willing to eat that they haven't seen before. C. So picky eaters. Yep. So, okay. That's so great, Karen. Thank you for sharing. We will definitely go over some tips, and it's going to take a lot of time to hopefully get over that hump, but I do have some ideas and some personal experience with picky eating. But yeah, like I said, mine is probably recipe burnout. And then maybe even not enough time, but that's probably just because I haven't been planning. So, like, some of the information today will be a good reminder for myself as well. Okay, so we will move on. So, let's talk about planning and shopping smart and just some budget friendly grocery habits that can help you save money on a week to week basis. So, as that first slide said, we know you can save up to $1,600 on average a year if we put some time aside to plan and to think about what we're going to roughly make for the week, even if it's just dinners that we're doing. So what that looks like is a little bit different for everybody. You could use an app. You could get a paper calendar, something like this, and write it out. You could have your grocery list divided into categories of like making sure you have vegetables, fruit, whole grains, dairy, protein up foods. Assuming your family can eat dairy. If they can't, that's totally okay. We can get those nutrients in the other food groups. But if we're buying foods from each of those food groups, then we know we can put a balanced meal together that has all of the components that we're looking for, and then we can learn different ways within those categories to make those more budget friendly. Keeping a list going, like, is there stuff that you know that you use on a weekly basis? So just always having that on your list and always making sure that is something you shop for. And if there's a sale on something and it's within your budget to buy a little bit extra just to stock like the pantry or the freezer with, then that's a good idea too. But on the flip side, just because something's on sale, that doesn't mean we want to buy it unless it's something you know your family goes through a lot. Because that's where those flyers and those ads when we go get into the store can become a little tricky because they're there with big displays on purpose to try to get you to buy it, even if it's not something you would normally eat. So just being careful of that, sticking to your list. Review the weekly flyers and coupons and see if you can plan your meals around what you know is going to be on sale that week. This is especially important for if your family eats animal products, because those tend to be the most expensive part on our grocery list. So if beef is on sale or a certain kind of chicken that you like, maybe planning some meals to have more of that protein that week, knowing that it's available. Or if you have room in like the freezer to buy a little bit extra to put it in your freezer, so you can pull it out and thaw it out and have it for another week. And the budget tip at the bottom: a shopping list isn't just for groceries. Meal planning alone can shave 20 to 30% off your weekly bill, and that's because we're less likely to rely on like a pre-made meal or going and getting takeout if we have a plan, because it's not going to be like 4:30 or 5 o'clock and we're like, what are we making for dinner? You already know the items are already stocked, and then you're making it from home. And we can control the nutrition and making sure our kids are getting, and yourself, getting a well-rounded meal. So some more budget smart grocery tips. Choosing the store brands. We all know those typically tend to be less expensive, often 25% cheaper than like your name brand item. Sometimes the name brand items go on sale to compete with the store brands. So you can decide if that's important to you and if you want to buy that, or if it ends up actually truly being cheaper than the store brand and maybe stocking up on that. But that is usually a pretty good tip, to just choose the store brand. Using your loyalty and rebate apps. So I know Fred Meyer, if you scan the item, like you're going through the grocery store and it'll say it's on sale and you get that sale item, but then there's like an additional barcode that you can scan with your smartphone, and it's like your loyalty card is connected in there, and it will give you an additional savings when you go through the checkout line and you scan your loyalty card or you put in your phone number. So just kind of going kind of like a video game throughout the grocery store, scanning the extra things or the extra barcodes to get the additional savings. Um, and then there's also apps out there like Ibotta or Fetch that stack additional savings if that's something you're interested in looking at. Buying produce in season. Oh, right now in Washington State, our produce is delicious, and all the berries, so many different veggies right now are in peak season or going to continue to become into peak season, and they definitely will cost less in the grocery store. And then if you go to your local farmers market, they'll be there, and a note on the farmers market, depending on where you live. I know one near us. If the kids complete a scavenger hunt that the little info booth gives us, they give each kid, I want to say it's a $5 coupon to use at any of the produce stands within the farmers market. So if you have more than one kid, that could potentially be 5, 10, 15, $20, however many kids you have in savings to buy some produce there. So definitely ask the info. If you go to your farmers market, ask the info booth if this is something that they participate in. And if not, I know if you have WIC or if you have EBT, many of the farmers markets will offer like produce dollars. So you get a certain amount each week to buy the produce from the farmers markets. Choosing low cost proteins like beans and eggs, and maybe sometimes the frozen fish or canned fish, those or even the canned chicken will tend to be less than like the fresh meats, and making sure you kind of build meals around some of these ingredients just to cut down. We don't have to have like fresh chicken or fresh fish at every single meal. We just kind of plan it throughout the week and then sub in some beans or some eggs at different meals to kind of balance out that protein cost, because it definitely is probably the most expensive item on our grocery list. As I kind of already mentioned, buying staples in bulk, but also using maybe not like the big box bulk section of like a Costco or Winco, but going to like a not Winco, Costco or Walmart, but going to like a Winco to use those actual bins to buy maybe some of these grains, that's going to be a lot less per pound or per ounce, however they're selling it. And then always remembering to compare unit prices. So checking the price per ounce per unit, not just the sticker total. So if you know your family goes through a lot of yogurt, for example, sometimes you'll see the little containers that says like 88 cents or $1 for like an 8-ounce container. And the bigger one costs like $5. But really, if you look at the cost per ounce, that $5 one is actually cheaper per ounce. And if you know you're going to go through it and use it all and it won't get thrown away, then buy the bigger one, because you'll save money in the long run. But if it's something that you don't use a lot and you're going to end up throwing away, then maybe it is smarter for your family to just buy a single little one if that's all you're going to use. So that's just one example, but many different items you can compare the unit price and see, and just think it over. Is this something that my family uses a lot? Is this something that I can throw in the freezer if I don't go through it? Because we really want to try to reduce waste. As we all know, that's just throwing money away if we're not using the item. So we've done a whole webinar series on how to stock your kitchen, but just in case you didn't get to make that one or didn't have the presentation sent to you, this is just a reminder of how to stock a budget-friendly pantry. If you have these items on hand, and let's say you didn't have time to do your weekly grocery shop, like let's say it's like Monday or Tuesday and you just weren't able to get around to the planning, that doesn't mean you have to get like a takeout item. If you have some of these items just kind of always on hand in the pantry, you can usually whip up something that is nutritionally balanced and budget friendly. So as I mentioned, canned beans and fish. You could also put chicken here too. That's going to be a protein option. Just always having that. When I'm doing like my Costco run, I always look to see where I'm at in my canned tuna. Um, that's just something I always have on hand, knowing that I can make either a sandwich out of that or I can mix it in a salad. It's really versatile, or just like eat it on its own. And I know it's a nice dense protein option. Um, Having some low sodium canned or frozen veggies or soup, because usually you can just add like a protein to that to make it a well-rounded meal, and it can come together quickly and easily and inexpensive. Having some whole grain pasta, brown rice, or oats on hand so we fulfill that whole grain category when you're thinking about your what should be on your plate. I already mentioned the frozen vegetables. I would say frozen fruit would go in here too. I think especially when items aren't in season, and especially around here, like in the winter times, I feel like the only fruit that you can get that doesn't really fluctuate in price is like bananas and apples. So if your family is a little burnt out on those, going somewhere like Costco or Winco where they have frozen fruit that's the same price year round. We know it's picked at peak ripeness, so it's very nutrient dense. It's just a texture thing that's a little different, so that might be an adjustment for some of your kiddos. That can be a big reason why kids don't want to eat something, is because the texture is different for them. But it's repetition. It's that getting used to it, or preparing it in a different way. So maybe you make a smoothie out of the frozen items instead of just serving like a handful of like frozen blueberries or something. Having eggs on hand, again, I know that cost of eggs have gone up. However, there's still a cost of effective protein option and extremely versatile. Can be used for any meal throughout the day or snack, and just a really dense source of protein. And then always having some seasonings, maybe some flour, herbs, and oils to do the cooking of these other items, and putting a meal together. So if you have like some salt, some pepper, maybe a mixed herb of some sort, usually you can throw something together, and then some kind of cooking oil and maybe some kind of vinegar. Those would be like your main base components to keep in your pantry or fridge, so you can season your food and prepare something easily with flavor. So, for those who are joining today, with what we just reviewed, which budget tip would you maybe consider trying first? If you aren't using store brands, maybe switching to store brands. B, try a rebate app. C, shop the season. Or D, lean on beans and eggs for your protein instead of heavy meat options. I think for my family, I'm going to continue shopping this season. I also just signed up for a what is it? A CSA? I can't remember. A box of vegetables and fruit that gets sent to the house, and I'm going to trial it and see the amount that the box is costing me, and see how much actually comes in the box. And then I'm going to compare it to what I would normally buy on a weekly basis and just see if there's a wide difference. I think people have shared in the past, and I know it's true for my family, utilizing like the delivery options or the where you shop online and you go pick it up. I end up spending less money because it's less of those impulse buys for us, and just really sticking to the list because I can't see what else is available. Um, so that's something I'm going to look into in the summer and just compare and see. But what is there anything else? Or maybe there wasn't something that I shared, but is a tip that other people could benefit from that would help with their budget of shopping. My chat's not coming up. There we go. D. Okay, yeah. Leaning in on more of I think that can make a huge difference on your budget is by choosing more plant-based proteins or the eggs. Okay. So let's talk about recipes and how to put them together and some specific recipes just to give some maybe ideas that are what we call kid friendly, but adults will enjoy it too. So the first one we're going to look at is sheet pan chicken fajitas. On average, making this at home costs about $2.50 and should take about 25 minutes to prepare. If you're not super comfortable in the kitchen and cooking, it could take longer until you kind of figure out the steps of how to put a meal together in the cooking. And as the caregiver, that's going to require some change in patience if you're not used to cooking a lot. But just knowing that your savings there can be quite a bit of savings over time, you'll get faster in the kitchen and you'll be like, okay, I know I should get this stuff chopped up because that's going to take the longest, and then prepare my meat or whatever the recipe calls for. And you'll get more comfortable in your kitchen. So I just really encourage, if you don't cook a lot at home, maybe aiming to cook for like one meal a week, just starting there and then building off of that. But this recipe is very versatile, very kid friendly. Chicken thighs, or you could do the pinto beans, which will be even more cost effective. Chicken thighs tend to be cheaper than you like the chicken breasts, and they tend to have a little bit more flavor because of the fat, and you can trim away some of the fat on them as well. And they cook faster, I feel like, because they're usually smaller and a little bit thinner. Some bell peppers and onions, diced up or sliced up, or really any veggie that you think your kiddo will go for. Getting like a simple taco seasoning packet, or you could definitely make your own and just kind of always have that available, plus an oil. And then some tortillas, cheese, and salsa, or whatever kind of toppings you want to put on that. I would, even though I know it's fajitas and lettuce wouldn't typically go in a traditional fajita, I would probably still throw some fresh lettuce on this at the end or have it on the side as like a little salad, depending on the age of your kid and if they can chew lettuce yet. Might be more appropriate for like 3 and up. But basically, you're going to toss the chicken and the veggies with the oil and the seasoning. You're going to roast it on a pan for like 20 minutes, probably at like 375, 400, and then serve with the tortillas and the toppings. I probably would saute up the peppers and the onions just to make it more kid friendly, and that's a traditional way of having fajitas. But while the chicken is roasting is when you can be sauteing up the veggies, so everything's kind of happening at once and hopefully will come together pretty quickly. And then you can build on there. Now, let's say your kid's a little bit younger, or we're working on expanding their palate. You can deconstruct this. They don't have to eat it as a fajita. You can just maybe have a tortilla that's warmed up and a little pile of the veggies and a little pile of the chicken, and just have it separated out, and then they can choose on there what to eat. And then on here, starting with a mild seasoning on the side, because some kids' palates are a little bit more sensitive. On the flip side, though, too, I have worked with OTs before that said some kids, the reason they're being highly selective or they don't want something is for the kids that are more like sensory seekers. Some of them do want a lot of flavors. So kind of experimenting with that with your kiddo and asking them or having them smell the seasonings and like telling you what they think of it, that can help you cue in like, oh, my kid actually wants a little bit more flavor and enjoys having a strong flavor. And then other kids, they may not. They might just want it kind of a salt and pepper oil flavor. Are there any tips, tricks to using the frozen bell pepper and onion mix for sheet pan meals? It's usually cheaper than individually buying, and they're already chopped. Yes, and much more convenient, Robin, right? Having it already chopped. I would say those do roast up. I would rinse any of the, like in a colander, like a fine mesh one, like maybe rinse it just to get any frozen bits off, and then kind of dry it a little bit, toss it in the olive oil like you would your chicken thighs, and then put it in. But because they're so small and chopped up, I would probably add it to the sheet pan if you're trying to keep it on one single pan with the chicken thighs, like midway through of the chicken cooking. Or while the chicken's cooking, if you kind of soak up some of that moisture with a paper towel, you could then just toss it in a pan on the stove top with some olive oil and have it cook that way. It might not be as crisp, but I think still pretty good. I have done this before where I've thrown it in the stove top, and I've even roasted frozen veggies, and it's come out pretty good. There's a little bit noticeable, little bit of a difference in the texture, but the flavor is still there. So kind of play around with it with roasting or frying it. I think the key is just trying to remove some of that moisture before. Okay, the next recipe is a one pot veggie pasta. Kids love pasta. I feel like this is universal for most kids. Finding which shape of noodle that they like. And then this is a way of using that kind of as your base to get more variety in their diet of like the vegetables. And then in this case, the cheese is kind of their protein source. You could also maybe add in some chicken or at one time I tried to stir in like cooked lentils into the pasta. My kid did not go for that, but one of my kids did. The other one did not. But you can play around with it. But pasta, I feel like, is a really good base to add different things to and play around with. If your kid is overloaded with having everything mixed together, this is another meal where you can deconstruct and have the pasta plain and have maybe the marinara sauce where they can dip like a noodle into it, have the cheese in a section and then have the veggies in another. Or in the marinara sauce, you could put the cooked grated carrot or broccoli or spinach like mixed within that sauce, as long as it's like finely cut up. And usually kids don't notice it in that sauce and they'll eat it right up. So you choose your whole wheat pasta, or if your family goes for any of those like protein type pastas, you could do that here, just trying to get more fiber in their diet instead of like a white pasta. And then marinara sauce, that's just a super basic one because remember you can add whatever to it for flavor. So I usually just get a basil one or just like a roasted tomato marinara sauce that I add different things to. And then you could add some grated carrot or frozen spinach while you're heating up the sauce, and then some shredded cheese on top, or like I said, deconstruct it and put it on the side. Oh, and then yeah, on the bottom it says blending the grated veggies in the sauce is great for kids who just, if they see a vegetable, they're like, no way, I'm not going to eat this. If it's blended in a red sauce, they typically don't notice. On average, this costs about $1.75 per serving and should take about 20 minutes to prepare. Freezer egg muffins. So this is something you can batch cook and thaw out later if you want, or just keep them in the fridge for like 4-ish days. But it's making like using a muffin tin and taking your eggs, like you're making scrambled eggs. You put a little bit of milk, or if it doesn't have to be milk, if your family doesn't do dairy, you could do some water or a plant-based milk. If you do dairy, adding some shredded cheese, any kind of diced up vegetable, and then mixing it all together and putting it in the muffin tins, and then baking them for 18 to 20 minutes. And then you can pop them out, eat them fresh, reheat them later, freeze them, reheat them. Something great for batch cooking or for really busy mornings, just having for the week. This is something where we're going to talk about how to reduce picky eating, is getting the kids involved in the kitchen. So letting the kids pick what goes in the tin, that gives them a little independence or autonomy, and they feel like they're getting to try to make the food, and so therefore they might want to try what they made. So any way you can get them involved in the kitchen can be really, really helpful in expanding their palates and their intake on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis. Pizza night. I feel like most kids love pizza. Again, it's more of that marinara bread combination. We're just trying to boost the nutrition by choosing maybe like a whole wheat English muffin or flatbread, or maybe you have the time to make your own dough. Adding the marinara sauce. This is where kids can get super involved of sprinkling the cheese, adding different veggies. Maybe you have some canned chicken that you put on top of that for extra protein. Or you could serve maybe some like beans on the side or something just to get a little bit more protein. But they can pick what they put on it. And it's really, really fun and something to look forward to, and a lot less money than ordering a pizza out. I feel like ordering pizza out these days is pretty expensive. Usually not very many veggie options, or when you start modifying things, it just gets even more expensive. So just having like maybe every other Friday be pizza night. This gets the family together, cooking together, and then you can really control like what you put on it and expand their intake with that. And then a quesadilla, of how we can boost the nutrition of a traditional quesadilla. We can get the whole wheat or corn tortillas just to get a little bit more grains. We can add beans in there, or again, any type of meat. If it's like leftover from another meal, you can just dice it up really small. You could add, I always add really chopped up fine spinach and put it in there. My kids usually go for it. Spinach is like a very bland green compared to other greens. It's not super bitter. So I feel like it mixes really, really well in a lot of different dishes. And I'll put it in smoothies, I'll saute it up in foods, I'll put it in their pasta, just anywhere. So I know that they're getting some kind of green intake. And it's usually not offensive to their taste buds. So unless your kid sees a green and freaks out, in a tortilla, we could also have it kind of hidden in there. But you cut it into triangles. I think making food fun is another. I mean, I know we can't do this every single meal, but every now and then trying like different cutouts, like that can be something different for them and interesting, and make them want to try it. And this is also probably another one, depending on the age of the kiddo in your house, that they can get involved in helping prepare. And every time we involve a kid in the kitchen, even if they don't eat what is helping being prepared, that counts as an exposure. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to eat it or try it. They could be grocery shopping with you in the grocery store. You could ask them to like help wash it. Depending if you want them, like older kids can maybe help chop it up, whatever you feel comfortable with. But age appropriate tasks, having them see it, touch it, smell it. They don't necessarily need to taste it. This will count as an exposure. And eventually, hopefully, once they've been exposed to it enough times, they want to try that item. So cook once, eat twice. This not only is a big time saver, but it also makes the week a little bit calmer. So you're not having to like prepare a meal every single night. And also when we're cooking once and eating twice, we're usually saving money, is because the batch cooking cuts down price. So cooking on the weekend, this time of year, when it's hot, maybe these are not foods, but thinking of this maybe for more of the winter, the soups, stews, and casseroles. But if you are eating animal products, double cooking like your ground beef or your turkey for chili one night, or for tacos one night, or just to have over some rice or something like that, just having that protein readily available. I feel like the protein is usually, if it's not a plant-based one, it usually takes the longest to cook. So when it's already pre-made, you can usually find components of the other items to put a meal together pretty quickly. Putting extra portions in the freezer so you have that option to thaw it out later is always a great idea. usually you can thaw it out pretty quickly if the item's already pre-cooked. If not, just kind of thinking ahead, like, okay, in the morning I'm going to pull this out so it's ready for nighttime. Um, Recipes with, oh, that was supposed to say flavor. Sorry. Flavor recipes with a few ingredients. So recipes with 5 or few ingredients are faster to shop for, cook, and clean up. So choosing really simple meals like the ones I just presented to you, there weren't a lot of ingredients to that, and it doesn't have to be fancy. It can be very simple. We can meet all the requirements to have a nutrient dense meal. And this also can keep it more budget friendly when we're not having, 20 different ingredients put into the meal. Always having a no cook option in your back pocket that you know your kiddos will eat. So I'm lucky. My kids will eat canned tuna. I always have like a sweet relish on hand and a little mayo and a little I usually use like some Italian dressing and I just mix that all up with the tuna and they'll dip crackers in it or just eat it out of the bowl. But trying to find something that your kids will eat that you don't have to cook and prepare can make life really a lot easier. A simple sandwich if your kiddos are into sandwiches. I'm trying to think of other no cook meals. Usually kids don't go for salads yet, but some might, depending on how old they are. Like a grain bowl, like cold grain bowl could be easy to batch cook different grains and then putting like the cold chicken on top and some like tomatoes or cucumbers and just having this like bowl situation. Again, it depends on kind of the age of your kids, but that is nice to have, just knowing that like you can put that together and instead of having to get like takeout. So, were there any recipes that you all were excited to maybe try or incorporate into your weekly routine? Any way you would modify them maybe to make it work for your family that could be helpful for other participants on this webinar? So tonight I'm actually going to batch cook, well, maybe actually this afternoon, so I don't have to worry about it in the evening. I'm going to chop up my chicken and then I had like a square of beef pulled out. So I have like a few random items that well, it might be enough for one meal with just one of the proteins, but I'm just going to get them all cooked up. So then, and I have, or got some taco shells in my grocery order. So I think tonight we'll do tacos and then we'll have the leftover proteins just to eat as is, as like a lunch. So a lot of times I'll batch cook chicken or I'll make a little bit extra for dinner, knowing that the next day for lunch for the kids, I'll just like serve it cold, like chopped up, and then I'll put some carrots and cucumbers and a fruit, usually like apple slices. This time of year we do get more berries. And it's done. Like they've met their components. It's really quick to put together. And what made it easy was batch cooking some of that meat. So instead of fajitas, we'll probably be doing tacos tonight. I'm using those leftovers for other meals throughout the day. Okay. Okay, so maybe the reason more of you joined today is just to talk about how to help our more selective eaters. And this is based on a woman named Ellen Satter, who really dove into why a child eats the way they do and um, how this maybe gets changed along the way and just the developmental stages that our kids go through of eating and what's normal and how to just make mealtime less stressful because it should really be a time of joy because we want to associate food with just ease and joy and not it be this like stressful time like what is our kid going to eat, and you don't want to have to cook 3 different meals in the house. It should be just cooking one meal. So let's see if any of this will help with some of the battles going on in your household. So I just want to say picky eating is extremely normal. It's developmentally appropriate. It usually peaks around age 3 and 4, maybe even 2. I have a 2-year-old and I'm seeing her be more selective. I was like, oh, you as a 1-year-old, you ate everything. And now she's wanting to assert a little bit more of her independence. She has a few more opinions. And I just have to remember, like, maybe not that meal she's going to eat all of the components, but if I take a step back, in that day, did she get some protein sources? Did she get some vegetable sources? Did she get some fruit sources? Did she get some whole grain sources? And usually, yes. Maybe not. Maybe we went a day and she didn't eat any protein. I'm not going to stress about it. I take another step back and look at that week. What was she eating? Is there an area can we work on? Do I just need to keep introducing it to her? For example, for a long time, she'd eat scrambled eggs, and it was great. And I knew she was getting a really rich source of protein with a lot of other nutrition in it. And then one day she just stopped and she wouldn't eat it. And I found that I wasn't even giving it to her anymore because I was like, oh, she's just not going to eat it. I don't want to throw it away. But then, I remembered my training and I remember what the research says. And my other kid, he's 6 and he'll eat scrambled eggs. So I make him some and then I just take 1 or 2 bites from his plate and I put it on hers. And the other day she ate them. And I was like, wow, you haven't had eggs in a long time. I haven't been serving for it. And she ate them. Today she didn't. So it's kind of back and forth, but you just have to keep with that exposure. You have to keep with that repetition. There's no pressure about it. It's just on her plate. If she chooses to eat it, yay. If not, like, okay, that was an exposure. I know there's other things on the plate that she's going to eat, and we just keep going with it. And by only providing that like 1 or 2 bites, I'm not feeling like super guilty that I'm throwing that away, or if she didn't touch it, maybe I'll just even eat it. Or the dog. But it's then we know we're not wasting a whole bunch of money because we're throwing a whole bunch of food away. That's, I think, also very key. And maybe I say this later, but just giving, especially the younger the kiddo, only a few bites of the items on their plate. That way they're not overwhelmed and like don't know where to start or what to eat. And that way you're not throwing away food at the end of the meal if they decided not to eat it. I'm just going to pause there to see if there's any questions. This is I know it's a lot of information, and I know this can be so frustrating to know that this is normal. It's like, when is this going to change? But it's just kind of sticking with it. Okay. This is something I work with families a lot, or friends who are like, oh, you are only cooking like one meal. Like, how do you do this? And it took a lot of practice, and it kind of takes a lot of just standing your ground of your job as the caregiver is to provide the meal, the food, and a time of the day. And hopefully you're consistent throughout the day so the kiddo knows when food's coming. Um, but the kid's job is decide if they want to eat it. And and again, I know that can be extremely, extremely hard. But usually I try to design meals where I know there's going to be an item that both of my kids will eat. And then the other items, it's like, well, maybe they will, maybe they won't, but at least I know there's something on their plate. And if it's an item, because neither of my kids like things all mixed together, I try to make the meal where I can deconstruct it for them. But for me, maybe I'll eat it as a taco or a bowl with all the things. So those are kind of the two things I think about when I'm planning a meal. And then, am I serving something from each of the food categories? Is there a fruit or a vegetable and a fruit? Is there a protein source? Is there some kind of starch source? And then I serve that, and then it's usually within something that I enjoy as well. So I only have to cook one meal. Maybe I know that like my kids don't like as much spice as I do, so I'll put theirs aside and I'll add a little bit more spice to mine. But again, I'm only cooking the one meal. And then, as it says on the bottom, offering that familiar food that you know that they'll usually go for, especially when there's something new that you haven't tried, that will help them be like comfortable, and they'll start eating that familiar food. And then maybe they'll see the other family members eating the new food, and they'll be curious and want to try it. And it's okay if they didn't, just serve them like one or two bites and see what happens. But I really try to encourage my parents to not be line cooks and preparing a different meal for everyone. And it might feel really daunting of like, well, how am I going to like start this practice? And I think it's just like having a discussion with the family and saying like, this is something we're going to try. This is how it's going to work. And yeah, there might be some pushback. So it's just kind of having that conversation and knowing that you might receive some words back, and that's okay. But just stick with it and just keep trying. And over time, hopefully it gets easier. Especially new parents or parents with like one kid, they were like, well, they didn't eat at that meal, and they get really, really worried. And at the end of the day, the kid will end up eating. They have these responses that they're born with. They know like when their body needs to eat. Their appetites change day to day, hour to hour. So it's some days they might eat a lot, other days they might not. As long as they're kind of continuing to grow every time you go to the doctor and you're staying within that percentile, they're okay. Um, it's just we're just trying to relax around that a little bit and knowing that our kids will eat. And it just takes time. Um, so pairing new foods with favorites can kids tend to dislike bitter or sour flavors at first, so you want to pair them with something more salty or sweet. Be careful with the sweet. But broccoli is a bitter food, so maybe you put some cheese on it. If you know they really like cheese, that provides that salty flavor. And if cheese is something that they really like, it's also a familiar food. And then you're showing how these two things combined together can be delicious. Keeping the portions small, we've already talked about, and the pressure off. Remember, the goal is exposure and not to clean their plate. So just very minimal amounts, getting them to look at the food, maybe touch the food, smell the food. Maybe there's a conversation you can like role play with another person in the household, like, oh, what do you think of this broccoli? And the other person can respond, like knowing that they're playing, like, this tastes salty to me, or this tastes, I can really taste the lemon if you sprinkled lemon juice on it or something. Not saying like this is really good or this is really gross. Like, we want to just describe what the food actually tastes like, not putting labels of like good or not good on it. I mentioned this before, but the more we can get the kids involved in the kitchen, this is the more exposure they're going to have, and this gives them that independence that they're looking for, and usually kind of why they get to be picky. They're just trying to insert that independence. So finding age appropriate tasks, whether it's washing the produce, maybe stirring something up, maybe measuring something out, or even just setting the table, just having them involved in the process can be really beneficial. It doesn't have to be every single meal. It doesn't have to be every single day. I know when you're in a hurry or you're tired, the last thing you want to do is try to manage the kids in the kitchen. So just making sure it's a time where you have a little bit more time, a little bit more patience in the tank, and you're willing for maybe stuff to be a little bit messier. Just bring them in, have them help, and it's a really great way to expose them. If you're going to do the grocery shopping in the store or the farmer's market, bringing them along every now and then to help them like choose the vegetable or a fruit and see if it's something that they're wanting to try. And then kids are more willing to try food that they had a hand in choosing or preparing. This could even be like maybe on Sundays you sit down and you're preparing that grocery list or you're meal planning out. I just because I have burnout of picking what to make everybody in the house, I have tried to start being like, okay, you guys, what do you want this week? What sounds good? Just so I don't have to choose that it takes a huge stress off for me. And then I see that because they were involved in the decision making, they are more likely to eat that item. Offering choices, eat together. So offering two to three healthy options instead of an open-ended, what do you want? So this is like, do you want, if you know you need a vegetable on the plate, do you want carrots or cucumbers? You gave them two options, but they get to decide in the end. And so this choice builds the buy-in instead of just here are the carrots and eat them. Like if you have the opportunity to offer them two or three options that you're okay with, and then they get to choose in the end, then they're more likely to eat it. Trying to have a family meal without TV or phones or other distraction. This really helps the kids tune in to the eating and what they're putting in their bodies, what it tastes like, what it smells like, what it feels like in their mouth. They see other people eating it and hopefully enjoying it. Maybe we're not even talking about food, we're just talking about the day or talking about upcoming plans or something that's not stressful, and everyone's at the table together. Research does show that this can really help with expanding a kid's diet. Again, I know this isn't always possible. People have very, very busy schedules, but if one time a week, you know that Sunday night is family dinner night and everybody knows this and this is just kind of a rule in your house, then that is when you would do it. But see what works for your family and then try to have a family meal. Model trying new foods yourself. So kids are always watching us, especially the little ones. And they really listen to what you say and how you describe a food. So just being mindful of that and knowing that can be really, really helpful or detrimental depending on how we are talking about the food and we're eating the food. So something I'm personally working on is I tend to be a very fast eater. And I'm trying to really slow it down because I want my kids to register what they're putting in their bodies and not feel rushed at meals. So that's something I'm being mindful about, and like putting my fork down in between bites and talking about chewing my food thoroughly. Or I just sometimes will randomly throw out like, oh, this item's very sweet if I'm talking about a fruit, or um, just describing the food instead of saying, "No, I don't really like how this turned out," because then they'll be like, "Well, I don't like it if you don't like it." So yes, just choosing your words carefully and modeling the behavior for them. Okay, I feel like that was a lot. So again, whenever I'm working with patients one-on-one or families one-on-one, and we're talking about implementing change, we usually just try to pick one thing to focus on for a week or a month or 3 months, just kind of depending on the goal. Um, so if there was something from there that you'd really want to focus on and share it, whether it's one meal for everyone, just trying to get out of being a line cook if that's going on in your household. Food pairing, so that this is like the broccoli with the cheese example, or whatever it would be. Like, what's a food your kiddo really likes that you could pair with the food that they haven't tried or they haven't been willing to try. Maybe you want to get your kids involved more in the kitchen, or just offer choices that you're comfortable with. Yeah, great. So it sounds like getting um, offering different choices and then maybe trying to prepare the meal for one. It's good. Okay. So this is a sample week built entirely from the 5 recipes and pantry staples. So Monday, maybe you do the veggie pasta. Tuesday, you do the sheet pan chicken fajitas, but you double the batch, so then you can use those leftover fillings and throw them into a quesadilla the next day. So it's pretty much the same ingredients. You're just adding cheese and preparing it a little bit different way, so it doesn't feel like leftovers, or it's very minimal work. Um, and then, or you could do on Thursday a bean and cheese quesadilla or some kind of mishmash. And then Friday, make it your pizza night. For breakfast on Saturday, you could do the freezer egg muffins, and then maybe you make a little bit extra so you could have them for the following week. And then maybe you pull out a soup or stew that you have in the freezer and have a simple side salad with it. So this is just one example. There's many different ways to put items together, but just having just like a list like this can be really beneficial. Like, okay, this is what I'm making. This is how this is going to come together. I'm just like roughly thinking about it. Um, and we're saying, just as a reminder, when you build foods around like the beans and the eggs, and then you add your frozen vegetables and your grains and some seasonal produce, this usually will make a nice balanced meal, and you'll fulfill those categories of having a protein, having a vegetable or a vegetable and a fruit, and having a starch. So when you look at your plate, if you were to deconstruct it, it's fulfilling those categories. So then we're meeting our nutritional needs. And then a lot of these items we can buy in bulk, and that will be a little bit more budget friendly. And we're preparing it at home, so it's going to be a lot less expensive than um, like eating or buying a prepared meal out or takeout. So we talked about planning your week and using a list. It's definitely the biggest budget. Oh, sorry. Saver. You want to build your meals around the least expense or around items that are maybe on sale, and then thinking of nutrient dense staples to kind of always have on hand. We want to batch cook on the weekends, so weeknights are easier if that's possible or if that seems doable for your household. Um, we want to serve one family meals and let kids customize rather than cooking separate dishes. And then we want to stay patient. Remember that repeated pressure free exposure is what turns picky eaters around. Some resources and further reading. If you want to take a screenshot of this, or you will get the handouts after the presentation, but this is what came from, this is kind of what the presentation was built around. I also sent a handout kind of specific to this topic to Christina, and you guys will receive that later today when she emails out the presentation. But these are something to look into. You could also screenshot it. Okay, so does anyone have any questions? Do you want to talk about your favorite budget meal hack or something that you like that helps your kiddos eat more varieties of foods? This would be the opportunity to share with the group. If not, thank you so much for joining, and we'll see you in July. Thank you, Karen, for participating.
Thank you, Kelsey. Great class. While we're waiting for any last minute questions to come in, I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined us today. The next class in our budget friendly series will be on Tuesday, July 28th, and we'll be discussing flavor on a budget. So that'll probably look like some different spice blends, some different sauces, ways to enhance the dishes that you're making. Also, as you are leaving today's webinar, there will be a quick 6-question survey that will pop up on your screen. We love any ideas for future classes or any feedback that you have on our current classes. So definitely feel free to check that out. And thank you again for joining us, spending this last hour with us. I'm not seeing any questions, so I think we'll go ahead and wrap up. So thank you, everyone. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your week.
Thank you,
Thanks again,
Christina.
Kelsey. All right, bye,
Bye.
everyone.